some sense, force their way in to be able to speak outside protocol at a study session. And it happened both on Tuesday as well as today. And there's reasons why we need to be able to have sort of exceptions to that, but there's lots of stakeholders. And there's some stakeholders, very important ones, who aren't here. And so I think we have to be very careful in that. One question I have related to that process issue is this a school-by-school issue? And let's say that we can find a tremendous amount of support in one particular school for the ways in which they want to address full-day kindergarten. And it comes down to that last single class and whether you have the 4th, 5th grade or the 5th grade and some of those other kinds of choices. And I know those are going to be challenging staffing choices that are made. And as the staff thinks about what they bring to us for final approval, and I know sometimes we don't want to do that, but we're going to do that because some schools are already predestined to be able to have full-day kindergarten for every single one that wants it. Some of them are predestined not. And so thinking that through, letting those schools consider, and what's the process for them to do that. And that can be messy, but it's also a choice that happening. The fourth one, the multi-property. So we have a property, we have, and I wasn't on the board when the choice was made to build a high school to solve elementary crowding. And there are reasons why that choice was deliberated and approved. We have a lot of crowding in the north part of our district. We have 4 really large elementary schools. And as I was doing the math on what the staff wonderfully prepared for us, if we had gone with 4, over half of those resource teachers were in the 4 North Creek feeder elementaries, okay? And so that's where the crowding is. So the question that we have to meet as a board is we have a very crowded elementary schools in the north. And so what we should be looking at, both when we look at kindergarten, because this is like enrollment mitigation, is what are we doing with our very crowded elementary schools in the north? So I have an idea on that, but I think that's where our focus should be. The multi-property is property that we bought to build a school on, and I've seen the amount of cash we have and the amount of board available to assign fund balance. And if we wanted to build and say, let's go build an elementary school on that multi-property, we could make that approval. And we could do it at our next meeting. And so that's an option. It may not be a wise option. It may not be a horrible option. But it's something that I think I personally would like to know more about when I'm voting on January 12th about, and I know that there's thoughts that we don't necessarily know if we want an elementary school or what kind of a campus, this, that, and the other, but I'd like to know how big the site is, what could be there, and all kinds of information, and is that something that solves the crowding we have in the north? And then the last item, number 5, so I had comments, I had a lot of time to think about it, and I talked to a lot of people since we last met. So I, semi-tongue-in-cheek, but I knew that it was impossible for the most part to open the North Creek High School in total a year early, because that would just create too much change throughout the district. But the idea of North Creek and building one especially, which is kind of the 9th grade, 10th grade building, and it has the library and the nurse and the admin, and we have already hired our North Creek principal. I thought, is there any way, and I talked with a community member, and we wrestled with it, and it's not, I can't cook it, okay, but I can put the ingredients out on the table, the Tinker Toys, and I say that might be a way if we opened up North Creek as an intermediate center for 9th and 10th graders and funneled Skyview only as a 6th grade through 8th grade campus. And so then that gives relief in our 4 north crowded schools, because our north crowded elementary schools are what we were trying to solve, and North Creek is the approach, North Creek High School was the approach to solve that problem from the get-go. Then can we solve that problem and also get full-day kindergarten and other things in there, and not to do a system-wide change, which is too much, but could we do that? And there's certainly challenges with it, and I'd love to have some other feedback and explain to go further, but the mental idea and it's not my job as the board member, I know the board is to set policy, but I would like this idea to be wrestled with of turning, if the board agrees, turning Skyview into, for just 2016, a 6 through 8 campus, and moving the 9th and 10th graders to North Creek Building 1, not open the whole North Creek campus, just Building 1, and then moving as many of the 6th graders to Skyview that are in the feeder schools so that they be K through 5 and as much full day K through 5 and less movement. So that's my wild idea that is a challenge, but I don't think it's impossible.
Okay, so if you will grant me
Please.
a response as president, as the person facilitating the meeting. What I'd like to do is focus back on the purpose of the meeting. Definitely overcrowding is something that is relevant as a framework question about, but today we are tasked with providing direction on this full day kindergarten question. And so, in terms of your questions about, having slides available as soon as possible for the public, absolutely. Talking about how, dealing with comments at study sessions and looking at a building by building solution, in terms of the full day kindergarten question, I think very relevant. In terms of working on the larger question of overcrowding, I'd like to table those. We have coming up, listen for a second, not for today, that's not within the scope of this meeting, but we have coming up next month the final boundary plan from the EDTF. I mean, this is a very timely on the January 12th, we're going to get the first reading. January 26th, we're going to have the second. And we're tasked as a board with approving that plan and going forward with it. So in terms of any ideas, in terms of how it's structured, these ideas that you have, I think it's more relevant for that conversation than for today's.
And I'll respectfully, very respectfully disagree that the title of the meeting is Kindergarten Enrollment Mitigation. And enrollment mitigation requires every asset that we have. We talked about portables being repurposed and everything else, and using the Maltby property as a way to mitigate and offer kindergarten and Skyview only 6 to 8 is absolutely relevant. So I think they're absolutely on topic, and the other ones came as a result of how we are doing our community engagement and or the other process. So respectfully,
okay.
I disagree.
No, I absolutely hear that, and I understand what you're saying. I'm just trying to focus on what we were tasked to do today, and what that was to talk about these 4 plans. I hear your ideas. I'm not discounting them. I'm not saying they're invalid or
right.
that it's not an unwelcome idea to try to solve something that's very pressing. But I'm just trying to keep us within the scope of the question that we worked on. And that's why I started the meeting, because I think on Tuesday there was confusion over what we were supposed to do.
Right, but I'll also push back on that. The staff does not set the board's agenda, or they shouldn't.
Well, but
okay.
I can. I can. Well, for a meeting, I can.
We'll get into those process
we can
issues.
Get into those process,
the board is, each of us
Can I help for a second?
Please.
Can I help for a second here? I think that we are talking about kindergarten and we are talking about how do we relieve. I actually appreciated Ken saying, kind of narrowing it down to here's the buildings and here's, while I think that would be a very difficult thing to implement for a number of reasons. I don't necessarily think that it shouldn't be looked at.
Actually, I did.
Huh?
I do a board briefing. We actually talked about.
Did you guys? Oh, good. Well,
Did you talk about,
did.
and just to clarify, did you talk about Skyview only?
Yeah.
Okay, I'd love to see the data.
Maybe a board briefing.
Yeah, no, I think you guys vetting all of your ideas, I'm so appreciative, and even with option 4, it was great to have all the options on the table. So that's for sure. And I think that as the board, having options and being able to give feedback and have other ideas that is relevant to this discussion today is okay. And so if you guys have already done work on that,
well, and I didn't mean any disrespect, Ken. The point wasn't to saying that, if that would work. I mean, she's saying that. I mean, let's do it. But I just want to make sure, because I think again this was part of our difficulty on Tuesday, and I took that on myself. As a facilitator of the meeting, I just want to help us as a board be able to progress through the meeting and have it be functional. So in terms of, I'm not saying don't discuss it. I don't know if we could discuss it within this framework without folks being able to wrap their head around it and let us know about, I don't understand very much about permitting, I don't understand very much about the status of North Creek in terms of being able to put kids in there for September, I have no idea. So I don't know if we could discuss it within this meeting anyways. I'm not saying that we won't discuss it, but I just wanted to be clear again for the purpose of this meeting, what it is that we're seeking to accomplish. Does that help?
Oh, it does, and I'll make a motion to ask to seek consensus for the staff to look at that and to reply, since they've already done some of it, and I'll clarify what I'm asking for as a board member to the staff, because I understand that's the process, so.
Well, and especially, with having these kind of thoughts, because we are tasked with, because of the timeline, with finalizing the boundary plan by the end of January. I mean, definitely time is ripe, absolutely, to have these discussions, okay? So, we can, I think we should kind of, so you said you wanted to make a motion?
No,
to
not
talk
right now, I
about
thought we
it,
were just going around the table to raise
Oh, well, I
concerns,
thought
I
it
raised
might
my
be-
concerns, I thought it was turns for David, and then we were gonna go into discussion.
or we can do it now, would you like to do it?
No, I'd like to go around the table, because
We
I
can
thought
go
that was the
around the
process.
table.
Get down to 1 and 2, and then you can make your motion.
Okay,
Right, no, yeah, but I mean,
whatever
the point
works.
was to ask your
Okay.
questions and make.
So,
Okay.
I don't have any questions, but I have some comments, so we can pass on and move on to questions if anybody else has questions.
I don't have any questions.
Okay.
So since Ken's comments, I'm perfectly comfortable with you doing comments.
Okay. So, I guess first comment is I really appreciate the way that this information was prepared and presented. I know it's very complicated, and in short order, we were given a lot of information, so I really appreciate the work on staff up to this point. And I know there's gonna be a lot of work down the road too to implement whatever decision. Because 3 and 4 are recommended to be taken off the table, and I appreciate that decision, Larry, so I won't speak to 3 and 4, but I would like to speak between 1 and 2. And I thought what I would do is just list the things that I thought were really positive about number 2. And I like that it maintains our current class size for our students and our teachers and our staff at all 20 elementary schools, grades K through 6. So I thought that was a fabulous benefit to number 2. The other benefit is now the Washington State will be paying full-day kindergarten for every kindergarten student in our district next year, and that's a year earlier than expected. I thought that was another huge positive.
Wait, not
Yeah.
half day.
No, full day.
Okay.
Full-day
Yeah.
kindergarten. The other thing is now, next year, our Northshore School District will offer at least 736 more full-day kindergarten spots for our students than we do currently, at again, no cost to our families. Is that not true?
I don't think so. 4 offers it for 700.
Or
Yes,
offered
but
it for like 1,400.
Well, 4 was for all of them.
For all of them.
So this is
but-
half. This is on page 18.
Okay.
New state-funded full-day kindergarten students. That's where I was looking.
Okay, fair enough.
But that's just state funded.
That
We-
excludes, yeah.
how many
This is the word new.
full-day kindergarten do we have today, no matter how they're funded?
Yeah, that's how
Oh,
many
new money.
full-day kindergarten students will have, will be getting state money for them.
So
what
those
line
families won't be
item are you
paying.
looking at?
Correct.
I was looking at new
Oh,
state-funded.
736.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
that's wonderful for those hundreds of families
State
not
Lydia
having to pay for
funded
kindergarten.
kindergarten.
Yeah.
So the current state-funded full-day kindergarten students are at Wooden and Kenmore, so that's,
100 something.
yeah, 203.
Chris,
Chris,
in the back,
203, so 759 plus 203
536.
out of the 1,690.
And then how many total full-day kindergarten do we have this year?
It's about 60% roughly of our
60% of the
overall.
1,500 some students.
So in terms of the number of kids getting full-day kindergarten next year versus this year?
Maybe
Okay.
less.
Less
Okay.
than 736.
Right, so it's funded but not necessarily
Maybe
recipients.
less than current.
Thank
So it's
you,
a
'cause
different-
that was carrying it.
It's a different point,
Yeah.
but I'm glad to make the point that many families are going to be saving fees for next year as
Huge
well.
point.
The other thing is, with plan number 2, 9 out of our 20 elementary schools have room to offer parents the choice for full-day kindergarten. And so I thought that was a really strong part of number 2. And that comes from the green and the green bars on the chart that Jeff sent. Additionally, additional 4 elementary schools can remain unchanged from what we're currently doing this year into next year. And so if you look at those 4 unchanged schools plus 9 that can offer full day, 65% of our schools, 13 out of 20, are gonna have full-day kindergarten or no change to what they're currently having. When I say change, what I'm meaning is portables, that kind of stuff. It's just status quo at those schools. And then 4 out of 4 or 5 elementary schools will require 1 or 2 new portables. So I do acknowledge that as an issue that we have to deal with. And then the thing that I liked about Plan 2 over Plan 1 is it does minimize the ability or the need to bus more students to another location from their neighborhood schools, so that they would have to maybe transition back to the following year. But that was another strong point for number 2. And then another thing with this one is that 3 schools are going to require, still be able to offer the same hybrid model they are this year. They're going to require 3 or 4 new portables, so it's a significant impact to those North End elementary schools. So my thought, kind of like what Ken was saying, what are some options we can have for folks? I recognize that we had some 5 open classrooms on the east side of the district. I wonder if it might be possible for parents that want full-day K that don't get it, that they could transport their students to the eastern side of the district to take advantage of that for 1 year if parents wanted to. So I thought maybe that would be something that would offer an option.
We always offer that
Right.
option, and some do. The problem with as you know, with the logistics of that is driving from Fernwood to Eastridge is a crazy drive.
Absolutely.
So we don't have too many people that take advantage of that, but yes,
Glad it's
certainly
still an
possibility.
option.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. And then my thought on the permits, I'm glad that proactively, Ryan, you already ordered 4, because for Plan 1 and 2, we're going to need at least 10. So I think that was really smart to get that order in. I know we got a deadline by Christmas Eve to put in more. And so my thought on this is if we are capable of securing from the vendors the units for option 2, which is 16, and we are able to get the permits and we can install them in time, then that's great. If we don't, I think that we have to kind of consider what if Plan 1 could ameliorate that. Could we put some kids going to the primary center? And then I think the other alternative, if there's no choice, is at some schools we may have to look at the number of kids per classroom increasing just for that year because we have no other options that I could see. So I think Plan 2 is a strong plan. I recognize that it's a lot of work on the facility side and for the capital budget. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
So I'll just weigh in with some comments. Again, I had a whole bunch of notes about 4 as well, so that did simplify matters for me as well. I was trying to add up kids. I called and asked for quantities of classrooms at different grades at different schools, trying to get my head around the number of kids in classrooms. So it was an interesting exercise and not a very accurate one, so I'm glad I don't have to use that as a point of decision making. So in terms of Plan 1, 2, this is starting to segue into voting, because I'm going to state a preference.
Are we still
Well, and
gonna ask
that's why
questions?
point of order is that, because I don't have many more comments
I
than
do have
that.
another question that came up as you guys were talking.
So let's do that then. Let's have Kimberly ask her question, and then how about this for point of order? We'll have, ask your question, absolutely, then we'll give our thumbs up for what plan we're in favor of. And then at that point, Ken will address your desire for another motion. Is that so?
Okay, and I thought that
Am
we
I
were,
understanding that correctly?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
yeah,
Thank
and I'm also missed somewhere in that conversation that we were actually discussing Plan 1 and 2, so I didn't give my feedback on Plan 1
Well,
or
and I
2.
think it kind of segued.
So that's okay. So I'll
Yeah,
do
yeah,
that.
so go ahead. We're back to
So I wanted to know between Plan 1 or 2, what is the, do you guys have any idea of how many resource teachers would be needed in a comparison between Plan 1 or 2?
No. We haven't done that modeling.
Okay, so we don't know at this point if Plan 2 needs more, Plan 1 would need more, if they might be the same.
The difficulty with Plan 2 is citing all those portables, as Dave pointed out, actually. The reality will probably be, we'll need to look at using the primary center, and some buildings will need to have larger class sizes simply because there aren't any other classrooms, even with the status quo with respect to full day versus half day. So those buildings with larger class sizes as a result of that may generate resource teachers, but we haven't actually modeled that.
But I wanted to be transparent, we will be using some resource teachers.
I think
Probably.
I think somehow miraculously everything worked out so class sizes were where we want them to be, the answer would be probably not. But I think we could probably predict there will be some schools that will be so crowded and we won't have classroom space, we'll have to provide some resources.
And so at this point between 1 and 2, we don't have an idea whether either, do you think by January 12th when we vote on this that we might be able to get that information or model that information of which plan might have more?
Well, both plans have the same class size configurations, it's just where they're located. So there isn't a huge variance in the two models with respect to.
The real difference is using using 6 more portables or using the classrooms at the NPC.
Potentially 6 more.
And a little bit to Dave, to your point about Plan 2, if you couldn't quite get there and had to use the NPC, therein lies a challenge with the NPC. It's almost more problematic to have 1 class there than to have 6 or 7 classes
6 or
there.
0.
Yeah, so you sort of either use it or you don't. That's kind of that's sort of a dilemma, because whether it's 1 or 7, you can't just leave them out there on their own. We've got to provide some level of minimal infrastructure to support that.
My thought is really if we can avoid it,
Yeah, well, that's
too,
yeah.
would be ideal, but I do recognize that's a lot of logistics.
Right.
So as Kathleen had said in the video that I watched this morning, and the board had consensus around that, is that it's not ideal to have resource teachers. So if you guys do come up with that one plan would more heavily, I get what you're saying, that it's where the buildings are, but I don't know if that changes in any way that I'm not seeing on here. So,
Well, I think,
because I don't have the numbers to pull out.
I think we need to, at some point, know exactly how many classrooms we are going to have to work with before we can, we've got enrollment projections that we've been using. We would need to know exactly how many portables can be purchased, cited, and whether or not we have to use the primary center before we can even make that estimate. So does that make sense?
Yeah, except you just said whether or not we can use the primary center. You mean if we
Whether or
choose
not
one
we-
or if it's available?
I'm sorry, whether or not we need to use it.
Need to use it, okay. And, but in between Plan 1 and 2, there is no difference, to the best of your guys' estimates, between how many resource teachers we would need?
Yeah, we
Or
wouldn't
you-
know that. We'd be staffing on the same ratios that we're staffing
Okay.
at now. We would be doing our best to distribute kids across classes to minimize class size impact, and until we know exactly how many classroom spaces we have, it's difficult to figure out what schools are going to need to have slightly larger classes that we might support with a resource teacher, because that's where we would provide resource support.
As we do now.
And from a facility standpoint, I mean, as soon as we get more clear direction from the
Correct.
board around, do you want us to use NPC or not? Do you want us to move kids around or not, more kids around? Do you want us to move first graders around? Because that's what's going to happen. And what's the priorities you want us to follow as we lay our plan out? Because the direction that we received didn't have any weighted priorities. So that's why it came out into 4 or 5 different models. We need better clarity from the board around what your priorities are, and then we can model exactly what you want us to do to vet out the staffing. Well, once I hand that over to Jeff, then he can vet out the staffing, and I can say, Jeff, this is for sure what I can get for you from a classroom perspective, and how many full-day classes we can offer versus half-day classes.
So one thing I learned, again, from re-looking at that video is that the board had said that their priority was to go with plan, keep things as consistent as possible, which now we didn't have Plan 2 in front of us at the time. Keep things as consistent as possible and fill our extra classrooms where there was space in the east side of the district primarily. Keep the consistency, but fill those classrooms. And we all talked about consistency. Amy, you said consistency several times. Ryan said consistency. Larry, but that was a really important thing to us. So, and then we just said backfill the schools where there were extra space, then make those the full-day kindergarten schools. So,
So I think that's what we tried to do in modeling plan
One.
2 for that.
and one it looks like.
One, we
Well, one was-
moved NPC.
Yeah, we had that,
So that's why we ran one with NPC,
and one
and we
without.
ran one without NPC to
Correct.
meet the criteria of keeping the sister schools together and minimize the amount of rooms we have.
So I heard at the time, I'm agreeing with you, is that that was the board's
Yes,
priority,
Yes.
and that seemed to be the district's priority at the time.
yes.
And the second was to maximize the space. The district's priority was to keep things as consistent as possible. And then the board's priority after that was to maximize the space of extra classrooms we had primarily in the east side of our district.
Yes, which is what I think the four models tried to model.
Definitely.
Yeah, and that's why I think for us, at least for me and my staff, is that the more clear our direction is, the better the modeling will come out as to what we can and can't do from a portable purchase or facility or classroom opportunity space
So
that we can provide.
I want to say my priority are those two things, and you know, the rest of the board's going to be able to, and I think that that is demonstrated in, let me go back to 1 and 2.
So can you repeat your two?
Yeah.
Yeah,
What are your
so
those,
maybe
what
those
are
two-
your
The two
those?
things that I keep saying is to minimize the moves of kids and maximize the extra space that we have available and make those our full-day kindergartens.
So I think if you, oh, sorry.
Yeah, sorry, I
So-
just don't want to lose track of this, really.
Yeah, no, it's important. So I think as you look at this plan, when you look at, these are the classroom adjustments that we're talking about. And so when you actually go to the detail here, this provides a little bit more. So you get down to, you know, where we can capture computer labs that haven't already been captured, where we can do portables, et cetera. And then these are the other impacts we're talking about. So look at Candy Creek. So going to a single full-day kindergarten class, upping the number of half-day kindergarten classes. Fernwood, cutting in half the number of full-day kindergarten opportunities that are available. So those are the kinds of things that we were looking at as far as
Correct.
maximizing classroom space. My recollection of the conversation, though, is that where we didn't go was saying we would put Fernwood kids on buses to take them to empty classrooms
No,
in
we
Eastridge.
didn't.
So we were looking more what sort
No
of
one
made
said
sense
the bus
logistically.
kids, yeah.
Right, exactly.
And the other, but my number one, so speaking as one board person, my number one priority is to minimize resource teachers, because I never saw that as a viable option in any broad sense. So that would be number one. Then minimize the moves of kids, and then maximize the extra space. So,
Awesome.
because if I see that on a slide, unless we all agree to it, unless we have a majority.
Okay, so are you comfortable ranking 1 and 2? I think it might be helpful almost to have kind of a weighted voting procedure in case we end up being different, saying which plan 2 is your first choice or plan 1 is your first choice, and
So the positives I see with Plan 1 is we service more full-time, currently, we service more full-time kindergartners, and we use less portables. Not that we're not gonna need those portables, but I don't know, we're already buying 10 in this plan. So I think we're buying quite a few portables anyway. However, I have been nervous for a year about the primary center, so whether that's really going to take place or not, I'm not sure. Plan 2, that feeds into the minimize the moves of the kids, and that is what I like about that plan the most. And if I'm going in that priority list, minimize the number of resource teachers, minimize the moves, maximize the full-day kindergartens. Well, there's a conflict kind of between 1 or 2, because one offers more kindergarten students getting full-time than the other.
I don't think so.
No.
It doesn't.
Oh, because I'm maximizing the space.
Yeah.
You're right. So
It's
plan
the
2.
759
Plan two.
versus the 736 that she's looking
It's not.
But
It
you are
actually
correct in
decreases
this-
from today, either way. Yeah, it decreases from today's options,
Correct.
but
Yes.
between the two, there's like a 20-odd difference.
And I just want to be clear about the resource teachers. There's no protocol for assigning those. We do those at the end of the staffing process if we can't solve class size
Right.
issues. So we would anticipate, to the extent that there's classroom space, we'll use our current staffing ratios and equalize class sizes so we don't have to provide resource teachers. That would be the goal.
Yeah, I'm just saying that's my number one priority. Number two, minimizing moves, and number three, just to be clear, so I'm clear on it myself, is then at that point, maximize the number of kindergarten classrooms we can use, wherever we have space. And I think, correct, that would fall under Plan 2. Though I struggle with the fact that we've already paid for the primary center and those things, so that's one of my struggles. But I could fall into either one of those, so I think they both offer that, except Plan 1 requires more moves.
Well, I think to Ryan's point, having a concrete understanding of where we have our priorities will help inform this
Yes, that's
next
good,
step.
and those
Yeah.
are my, and maybe
Yeah.
this is what we
So
need
number
to do
2.
at future meetings, is put a priority list.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. All right, sounds good? All right, so Ken, what do you think?
So I like the idea of ranking priorities rather than just the plans, because I know you guys are gonna keep thinking. So I think if we can give them both. I'm unclear on the staff's view on the extra portables. So at the margin, if we're down to 1 and 2, we're looking at 11 versus 16 portables. What do we think about, what are thoughts that you have at this point, knowing that they could change?
So let me tell you what and part of it is the jurisdictions that we're working on and space.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a few schools, if you look at Plan 1, that we believe we can move forward with, given the space.
And if you may, are you talking about, when you say in review on the portable options?
Yes.
So you're thinking Arrowhead, Fernwood,
Yeah.
more, okay.
Yes. So right now, I think if you look at the map, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 schools that were short 2, 3, 7, 10, 11 classroom spaces.
Right.
Okay, so we know potentially Fernwood, we can get another one in, but it's going to create, again, 15, 16, 17 portals, whatever that number is. At Shelton View, no space. There's no space to add any portables.
But
So
you have 4 down there.
Yeah,
That's how many classrooms we need.
yeah, so that's
Oh,
what
I'm
we
sorry,
say.
I apologize.
So we're gonna have to look at either some combination, either moving the kids somewhere, or adjusting, or some modified, moving the EAP, something's gonna have to change at that school to create 4 classroom spaces at Shelton. Okay? At Arrowhead, we believe we can get a portable in. At Morelands, we believe we can get 2. We're checking on the 3rd portable to see if we can secure that portable in that area. At Woodmore, we don't believe we can get anything in, but we're verifying that. And at Wooden, we don't believe we can get a portable in.
I'm sorry, when it says portable options, it says Shelton View.
Yeah.
Mine is,
So remember, we also talked about this, we said we needed to check with the jurisdictions to
okay,
make
that's-
sure
okay.
that we can do that. And we've been following up with the jurisdictions, and we're working with 3 of them right now. Kenmore,
And
City of
Shelton
Bothell,
View
and
has-
Snohomish County.
Shelton View's a no-go now.
Yeah.
So we just lost those 4.
Yeah, so those are the ones that we knew if the mitigation plan was to put portables, we needed to verify that that was an option, and the jurisdictions that we're working with saying, we don't believe we can move, we don't have space in that area, or we potentially won't permit you for that. Okay.
And that's already kind of the kindergarten, I want to choose the right word. Shelton View and Frank Love is where we have the inability to or I guess we moved a lot of them to Frank Love, but Shelton, so Shelton View becomes the constraint, if we're just on theory of constraints, I hate to think of.
Yeah, given the amount of kids that are moving from Crystal Springs, right now, I believe Shelton View and Crystal Springs are feeding
Yes.
Frank Love.
Mhm.
But given the amount of kids who are moving from Crystal Springs to Frank Love, that doesn't create the space that we need to move Shelton View kids now back up in 2016, okay? On Plan 2, we create a little bit larger issue for us with portable issues. So similar to Plan 1, Fernwood, we can probably place, I said, 1, maybe 2 if we, depending on what the jurisdiction is.
And you're
But that
trying
will-
to place 4.
And we're trying to place 4. That would leave us 2 short of the Fernwood area. At Canyon Creek, there's no space for, to site another portable. At Kokanee, there's no space to site.
Yeah, I was wondering when I saw 2 where you were putting.
Yeah, to cite 2 portables. So those create the next tier in Plan 2. So Plan 1 has some restrictions on citing portables, either jurisdiction or space. Plan 2 creates a little bit more challenges with 2 or 3 more schools.
Can we cite portables here?
Huh?
Can we cite portables here?
We can cite portables anywhere we want, if
Why
there's
don't we-
space and the jurisdictions allow.
But then
We
that's,
have
the-
our-
but that's
our
the
pre-
moving the
I know.
kids.
But if we can't find the space, then we're gonna have to use another.
Yes. And I think that's why I think we've been struggling with the mitigation options to look at. We looked at portables as our #1 mitigation option, and then we were trying to vet through, do we want to move kids? Do we want to keep kids at school? What's the next mitigation option? Because that will play out in how you use NPC to fill up the remaining space. And how many additional full-day classes we want to offer or reduce to continue to keep the kids at their home schools.
And I also do, going through these plans, I also do agree, and I think you said, Larry, that the state is going to require us to offer kindergarten to the most neediest full day if it's available.
We haven't seen the specific language yet, but I believe it's going to have some prioritization for higher needs students.
Okay.
If you're accepting state money and you're at a school where you can't offer full day K to all kids, because your space doesn't allow it.
The other option we've not explored yet is denying full-day opportunities at some schools.
Yes.
So, so saying here,
At
this
Shelton.
plan, we were still essentially trying to keep at least one full-day kindergarten
Mhm. At every
option
school.
at every school.
And that may not be possible.
That may not be possible. I mean, depending on,
Even with the
again,
kid,
what
the
happens
primary
down
center.
here. Correct. Well, I mean, again, it sort of circles back to, depending on how many portables we can or can't place.
And
The,
you can't, this is just out of the box, you can't cite any here and have this be an extension of the primary center.
Teachers don't really want to teach in a portable at the admin center.
Yeah, I mean, I know. And there's no classroom
That's
space
just an
here.
assumption.
There's no-
Just an assumption we're making.
Plus the transportation issues.
we're pretty solid on our thinking.
I,
Mine's big enough.
The other thing to think about,
Better.
the other thing to think about too, for a full day K, even if you collapse a full day K, that doesn't necessarily mean that you've created another classroom. Because unless you have another group of half-day K kids,
Right.
you can take the program from full day to half day, but unless you have something to go in there the other half of the day, you haven't necessarily improved your situation by eliminating a full day K.
And that's why we keep on saying classrooms and belly buttons are a little
Right.
bit different in how we address the modeling.
So I guess we're on to me trying to get some guidance on either priorities or the different plans. Is, and seeing some of the 3 schools that are going to be, most humans look at what we had last time and we'll go next time, losing some sections of full day kindergarten. The notion of giving you general guidance, but going on a school by school basis, because we are kind of limited by the boundary changes, we're trying to limit schools. So does it help you, and can you, and I don't know, and this may be another question, talk to Fernwood community how does Fernwood community feel about the full-day kindergarten and losing two, and would they be willing to try and experiment with some type of alternative staffing plan rather than rejecting it? I think we're rejecting it for a district-wide policy. Is it still possible and helpful to staff if that's available on a few of the schools like those that would lose some full-day kindergarten?
I think the difficulty with that would be the decision-making process, because I could see, and I probably imagine what Tim might be thinking,
I already heard that Fernwood staff would leave.
yeah.
That would be just-
Well, there would be pressure points, and staff might not want to do it, make those trade-offs. The building administrator might, the parent community might, some parts of the parent community might. That would be a really, really difficult situation in which to create a real clear decision-making process that people would feel good about at the end. I think that might create a lot of controversy and conflict. That would be my guess.
Okay. So, and that's what, the question is from staff implementation, if having a district-wide policy is the best rather than, and now if a community were to petition for that, at least I would be open if they say, here's the way we want to do it here that gets more full-day kindergarten and our teachers and our parents and everyone's on board with that. You know, maybe an opt-in kind of a thing. Because in one or two, we have 700-ish kindergarten students who will perhaps be, and especially with the tuition no longer being there, some portion of those 700 kids are going to be denied.
Full-day K?
Yeah, and so I'm trying to anticipate that concern and that pushback.
It is a good anticipation, because the reality of that will be that parents who are quite capable of paying for full-day K can't have that option because there will be no full-day space at their school for their kids. So then they're going to get the child's going to be put on a bus and taken elsewhere, or at the best of cases, be in a half-day K. And I think you should anticipate those parents being quite upset about that. The problem with the deciding at the building level is the parents could push really hard. Staff is then in a spot where they are trying to respond to the needs of the parent, but maybe not feeling like they want to have those increased class sizes, and the principal's the guy in the middle kind of navigating it. And that would be really, really hard.
But just a quick thought I had about that. It's been my experience over years, the principals have been pretty empowered to be creative with how they set up their classroom. You know, splits being an example in terms of identifying, working with the teacher who might be comfortable with a split, a teacher who might not be comfortable with a split, and there may not be, you know, a model where before we've looked at full day versus half day, but it's been my experience principals have been empowered to do things within their own building and have flexibility to a certain extent.
Well, they have flexibility, but they can't unilaterally decide to go over staffing ratios and collapse a classroom and say we want a resource teacher instead. We've never had that. The way resource teachers are generated is there simply is no more room. It's too late in the year to do a teacher, whatever. It's a different kind of process,
Right.
but principals have never been allowed to say, you know what, we've decided we're going to do bigger class sizes and we get a resource teacher that we're going to use in this way.
No,
That's
okay.
out of the scope of their influence.
Ryan, under Plan 4, well, I'm not looking at Plan 4, don't worry, but where it says Maywood Hills 1 portable in review, but I don't see that on 1 or 2.
Yeah, I don't believe we needed.
If we could put one there, then that's another space.
Yeah, that Maywood Hills portable in Plan 4 was to accommodate all the full-day kindergarten coming over from Kobe.
Yeah,
Right.
potentially, I mean, that's one
But-
option that we can do is continue to.
I just saw it there, not in the
Right.
other spots.
Sure, let us look at that.
Okay.
The other thing I wanted to ask too is I know that Northshore Primary Center is being thought about. Is there another facility in the North End that could function next year?
We've looked long and hard.
Yeah, okay.
The challenge is, anything we would pick up would probably need pretty extensive tenant improvements to become a school. If it's currently likely, most likely something in the business park. And being able to, it's sort of like the North Creek option, being able to assure that even if we had something available now, given the timeline, could we pull it off by that period of time, and do we want to put all of our eggs in that basket, and what happens if we can't deliver?
Alternatively, maybe just get a big warehouse and put portables in it.
I mean, see,
Portables in, on the
I'm back to putting her at the admin building.
Maybe we'll have one
I
at.
like you thinking outside the, inside the box.
But we are, just to close it seriously on it, we are continuing to look
For lease opportunity.
for lease opportunities or potential other property moves that might be beneficial long-term.
But I did say that seriously, I really do think that if the portables are cheaper and easier than remodeling a structure, that could be a place to put them, that we could have access to.
Unfortunately, it's kitchen, library,
Yeah, it's-
nurse's office.
The rest of the
It's-
school.
it's the
And we can't
infrastructure
use
that we struggle with.
SAS, any part of SAS. I mean, I just don't know the spacing there.
You guys tour those, but it's,
And I realize we don't want necessarily our kids, I'm not.
Parking.
The issue with SAS is gonna be parking. So we're already short parking between the sort of two building support services SAS program. And that's probably gonna be the restriction based from the jurisdiction, is the first thing they look at is parking.
Is Costco building in the area?
So Ken, I'm trying to take notes and I think I might have to, should I write down priorities for you?
I hadn't gotten there yet.
Oh,
I was
okay.
asking the question of the portable. The second question I had of the portable was, we heard the argument earlier that a portable that we buy now is an asset and not necessarily an out-of-pocket cost, and that would allow us to, and where they would be sited, there would be ongoing usages, and especially if we were thinking ahead to K-trees, class size reductions, or other kinds of things, that it's capacity, that's usable capacity. What's your comment on that assertion?
Sure, so there's a couple things. I think from a district perspective, EDTF has been trying to reduce the number of portables we have in there. I think the portable growth that we experienced at the elementary level just was due to a short term, we needed to get to 2017. But the ultimate long-term goal is to reduce the number of portables we have and create more permanent space. The portables that we are placing today, we've cherry-picked all the easy places to put portables. Now we get into the most expensive siting of portables. The portable itself is cheap. It's going to be the relocation and the hookup. That's probably where 2/3 to 3/4 of your costs will exist, is in the construction aspect of siting, permitting, siting, relocation. So we could easily spend $4 million, and then to recite that, we would spend, I think as Tim said, some proportionate amount of money, we believe. The portable is it's really cheap and expensive.
But if it's already, like Leota, well, I think Leota is, if it's already cited at one school and you already have permitting for it, is the extra cost in the, and we talked about this at that previous day session, but is that extra cost in part of having to upgrade maybe the electricity that goes to, I mean, what are those?
Well, of course, so
It's
it's like remodeling your house. So let's say you start with a foundation and this is what you have. Even if you want to remodel your house, you still have to go back to the jurisdiction and they're going to apply new codes to you. So even though we have an existing portable there that was built and cited in 1980 or whatever it is, now they're going to, when we go back to the permitting aspects, they're going to, they're not going back, we wish they would go back to the 1980 permitting. They're going to use the current codes and apply the current codes to our siting or relocation.
But just for clarification, right, part of our moves over the last several years is we have, not all the portables we've cited at high impact schools have been brand new portables. We have moved existing portables
Yes.
from school A to school B.
Yeah.
And just incurred the siting and the permitting cost, but not necessarily the portable cost.
Yes.
All right, so I think I give my priority. I think, and I'm being totally serious in this, I think listening to all stakeholders is my number one priority.
Okay.
And I think we just need to find out, and mostly on a school by school basis, what does the Fernwood community want, what does Kokanee want, and at a generic level, nobody likes increasing our overcrowding. At a specific level, what do those people want, because it affects them and their kids, and to collaborate to do that. And I know there's problems with that, but listening to all the stakeholders, especially those most impacted. For the rest of them, I'm probably gonna share my board colleagues' preferences. I don't have a strong difference in terms of what I'm hearing everyone else saying. So I think I would just say listening to all stakeholders, making sure we do that. I did talk to 2 principals, and they were in favor of, getting the full day kindergarten to kids to the extent possible. And so I want to make sure that everyone's voice is heard, and then the parents, I know something like, if you're new to the district and you're gonna have a kindergarten come in, you may have no relationship, we may not be able to reach out to you.
Correct.
And you may not be able to advocate for the ways in which you want the district to serve you. And so to my concern is that I'm totally convinced, and I appreciate the feedback that we did hear from those who did, that increasing overcrowding at crowded places is a bad idea. Okay, so I'm totally on board with that, and I appreciate the staff trying to find a way to get kindergarten to everyone that we can. So I think listening to all the stakeholders, and maybe something bubbles up in that in terms of creative solutions.
So can I ask a follow-up?
Please.
How do I operationalize that? So,
On December 10th.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
so we follow up with the stakeholders at Fernwood. They say no. What priorities do you want me to use in
Right.
trying to address the shortage we have at Fernwood with the number of classrooms that will be short? Is your first priority then to move kids? Is your first priority to site portables? Is your first priority to reduce the number of full day K? I need something tangible that I can operationalize. That's gonna be my challenge when we start looking at
Okay,
this.
and I'll let the others go, but Kimberly's list was fine with me. Less resource teachers, lessen kid moves, increase extra spaces. I have no objection to what has already been said by the others.
Thank you, Ken. How's it done,
Did you give your priority?
Maybe it has not been.
Yeah, I think we need your priorities.
I think looking at option 1 and 2, the priority is where can we fit portables? That's probably the biggest challenge. And if we can find places for them and we can get them and put them, I think that's my preference, to minimize the extra busing to the primary center. My suspicion is looking at even option 1, which had 10 portables, and my notes say that we're short 4, 5, 6, 7. I mean, now I'm concerned that, we need the primary center and even more, that we really can't cite enough portables to keep the elementary schools at the staffing levels for next year. So I'm concerned, so my priority is, please take a look and see what we can do to try and come up with a creative way to find space. And I think the fact, I know everybody's been doing this for years and looking at these alternative sites. I really appreciate that there's a lot of work and thought into this. We've been working on this for a while. It's just a difficult challenge we face, but we've got to come up with the best possible solution with all these restrictions. And so, I don't know, I think
So
we'll probably need the primary center.
So probably, but would you, if they can get the port, since 2 is officially still on the table, even though the
Yeah.
portable, the siting is looking challenging,
Yeah,
if you
2
were,
is best.
if we can do 2, but otherwise 1.
That's right.
Okay.
But I heard can you go through your
Yeah.
top 3 priorities again?
Top 3 priorities is physically find classroom space to put these kids for next year where we can keep staffing ratios the same. And that is not the number 1 priority.
So,
I don't really
ration
need a second
ratio.
or third. I mean, that's
And then
that's it.
minimize busing, because that's kind of what.
Staffing
takes us to 2.
ratios or kids per classroom?
It is kids per classroom.
Okay.
It's class size that I have heard the most feedback
I
from.
just wanted, they're 2 different
Yesterday and
things.
today. And I would like to share that I found that really helpful, that I got so many emails with so many personalized stories explaining how this impacts teachers and parents and students, so I was really appreciative of the feedback.
And then second is?
Is just minimize the busing, but right now I think we just have to come up with what is an option to put all these kids somewhere and maintain the class size.
Okay.
Can I ask
So
a
first question.
And then
clarification?
you're okay with going down with less kindergarten classrooms then?
For 1 year, yes.
And then in the busing, does it make a difference if we're busing a full-day kindergarten versus a half-day kindergarten? So if the primary center is half-day only, does that run from 10 to 1? Does it mitigate the concern about the busing to the primary center if their day, from the time they get, because I think the way most of us think of the kid's day is when I get dropped off at the bus, do I get back to the bus? So if I get dropped off at the bus at 9:45 and I get back to my bus stop at 2, that's not an unreasonable day for a kid, even though they spend a little bit more time on the bus and a little bit less time in school. If we're busing a kid to full-day kindergarten and a different location, I think that sounds like that's kind of a harsh day.
It's not one section of
Yeah,
half
I'm gonna
day?
say so.
So there's an AM and there's a PM.
Right, so
Each,
that's,
each classroom.
So there's only 3 rooms?
no,
Six
rooms.
rooms.
6
rooms.
rooms.
12 sections.
12 sections of
each
half day.
sections.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not.
So one
Boxes and
side or
elevators.
the other.
And what is the super quick reason, what is the reason why we can't do full-day sections?
It has
there?
no windows.
And
Some
kitchen.
And that's some
Inside,
arcane
right. No, it's
RCW
an
or whack, or-
RCW that
It's a
says if children,
jurisdictional permitting
yes,
issue.
if children are
It's a
gonna be in
health
school all
Okay,
day,
okay.
they have to have access to a window, and it doesn't have that.
And there's not a kitchen, correct?
There's not a kitchen.
There's not a kitchen, there's not an office.
This is
But those aren't the reasons that veto it,
No,
it's because
it's-
the windows.
Well,
The
if
windows
we
are-
have them full day, we'd have to feed them, so we'd need a kitchen, right?
Or a catering truck or something.
Yes,
would have
and we
built
need
that,
music
yes.
and
Gotcha,
PE
gotcha.
and all
Couldn't
that
get
stuff,
there
so
because of
we
the
can't.
The window stops the process.
Yes,
Thank
they
you.
did. Yes, they
This
did.
was the whole problem, we originally planned on full day there and then
Well,
different
plus
things ended up
11
happening.
rooms.
And more rooms, correct.
Gotcha.
We
Okay.
could allow.
So David, I didn't mean, but that was just a friendly amendment on trying to understand.
Yeah.
So the primary center, then the busing to the primary center, if I may, then just to finish that point, starts when AM kindergarten starts, and then ends when AM kindergarten ends, and then the afternoon would start when afternoon starts and ends when the PM ends. So that's even, but then still that same point of, they're not gonna spend an onerous day if they're busing to the MPC, even though they may have a longer bus trip than if they're going to their neighborhood school. Does that make sense? They have 10 or 15 minutes more on the bus
No more so than exists right now
for the
with,
Frank.
with Canyon Creek and Crystal Springs kids who are going to Frank Love and
It's not ideal.
And that's something that came up in the.
But we have heard some pushback on that, right?
Oh,
Yeah.
in the
Yes,
community
a lot of
comments,
pushback.
that, you know, for the parameters for the EDTS boundary process, the community comments, that was one of the more heavily, I remember, weighted comments was about bus time.
minimizing.
Well, and I was
those,
at
right?
Frank Love this weekend at arrival time, and it took me 15 minutes to get in the parking lot. And when I said to the principal, wow, he said, yeah, it's the full day, it's the kindergarten kids, their parents don't want them to ride the bus. So they're all bringing them. So we provide the buses, but the parents don't want them to ride them because the bus ride is too long and they'd rather have them in the car than sitting on a school bus. So it just makes, the problems just kind of compound on it.
One thing, if I may, just to Ryan though, I mean, I think this, at first pass, if there's really challenges in getting 16 portables spaced, then I think we're automatically moving, from my point of view, to the kindergarten center. So I wouldn't say that I'm ranking this 1 and 2, like 1 needs disproportionate amount of focus. On a quick pass, if it's not gonna fit, we've gotta look for more space.
So just for clarity, what I'm hearing is, let's maximize portables first. That's the number one, we all agree,
Yes, I think-
that's what
yes.
we
Let's
wanna
minimize
do.
resource
Right.
teachers, right?
No, no,
Well,
let it finish, I think I know where you're going, go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
2, that we can use the NPC center if the next place is to create classroom space. Is that what I'm hearing? And then the third option is we may have to do some type of racial adjustments or class selective classroom adjustment. And those kind of the 3 criteria I'm hearing on an individual school by school basis.
Yeah, I think you're in it, right, so yeah, just to clarify, to make sure it sounds like, so maximizing the portables, because that's the spirit of 2, and if we can do that and get enough, similar to what we did in the past, then we're done. If we can't get enough service for the host of reasons why portables become difficult to place, then you open up, then you go to the NPC as the outlet valve.
Yeah.
Then you said,
then it would be the adjustment of your selective classrooms in specific,
Right.
whatever the specific school may be.
But that's not necessarily new policy, right? I mean, or are you saying, the principal, the building administrator does the best they
Well,
can?
no, I think what he's talking about is, what we would adjust is, for instance, Shelton View
Shelton
houses
View
the
would be-
EAP program.
Oh,
We
I
might
see what
say,
you're
okay,
saying.
we can't have the EAP there,